Can we have your attention, please?
My brother.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we know it.
Again, I am here.
Thank you. Thank you for
Here
coming.
again.
Always, always come.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I hope you all had a delightful lunch. And that should give you energy to stay awake and attend this panel discussion on the role of religion in conflict resolution and peace building. So are all of our panelists here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Somebody's missing. We have Muhammad, we have Pastor James, we have Asma, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, Ivorga, are you here? Emmanuel, Ivorga,
There is.
you're supposed to be on this panel, please. Thank you so much, everyone. Everyone can hear me. I will convene this session. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this panel. You cannot hear me? Come closer to the mic. Okay, how is this? Better? Is this better?
I think put it close to your mouth.
Close to my mouth. Okay. How is this? Better? No? Is this better? Is there a volume adjustment on here? Like this? Is this better? Can you hear me now? Okay. Then if everyone can hear me, then we'll proceed. And I wish to welcome everyone. And this is the role of religion in conflict resolution and peace building. And my name is Audrey Kitagawa. I'll be one of the discussion leaders and the moderator. And we will have the discussion leaders who also engage with all of you. And we have Mohammed El Sanusi. You saw a lot of him in the plenary preceding, and he's the executive director of Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers. We have Pastor James Wuye. He's from the African Union Dialogue Forum. Asma Reddy Balker, who's the Director General of the Ministry of Peace of Ethiopia, and Emmanuel Ivorga, who is the coordinator of URI West Africa, and substituting for Kelwangel is Rawad Mayub from Akwe. Okay, so each of the discussion leaders will have 5 minutes of presentation, and they will give their perspectives, and we will then open up the floor for conversation and questions and participation with all of you. And today's topic speaks to religion's growing influence and engagement with the United Nations and leading guiding institutions. And when it was organized in 1945, the United Nations was a secular organization that rarely involve faith communities. And but in the recent years, this whole aspect of faith-based diplomacy has become increasingly important in achieving the UN goals. And the United Nations and other international organizations have come to acknowledge, respect, and utilize the strengths of faith-based organizations. And religions are recognized today as an essential resource for government and international organizations due to their connection to their community, their moral authority, and ability to influence and mobilize people. Now, faith-based diplomacy is holistic and goes beyond conflict resolution to the restoration of the political order that has suffered from war and injustice, and the reconciliation of individuals and social groups. So the role of religion in conflict areas, any kind of conflict, affects communities, families, and individuals in seriously damaging ways. And the nature of religion is to serve communities and help them through whatever challenges they face. In areas actively engaged in conflict, religions provide places of solace, comfort, communion, which are critical to support the morale and faith of citizens confronted with the engagement of conflict. And religions provide a lot of continuity in the face of violence for their communities. And during conflicts, communities face many challenges, which religious and humanitarian organizations are equipped to assist with and have a proven track record. And that is in the areas of food security and livelihoods, health and nutrition, water and sanitation, education, and the prevention of violence against women. In post-conflict situations, their role evolves to healing, recovery, and rekindling of faith and community connections. And religious concepts of redemption and forgiveness are important perspectives to help communities heal from the devastating consequences of war or conflict. And the effects of conflict are often passed on to the next generation. So you have intergenerational conflict trauma. And it really goes quite deep. And the painful memories of conflict, loss, and injuries cause these deep emotional and psychological scars. And healing this trauma is a significant component of peace-building efforts. Post-conflict challenges that religions have shown to be involved in and to assist are peace-building, conflict mediation, education, empowering women and girls, and restoring agriculture and other food sources. And religions bring social, ethical, and spiritual resources to peace building, restoring human dignity and encouraging reconciliation and forgiveness. Spiritual concepts provide values, including empathy, love for strangers, the suppression of ego and greed, forgiveness and humility, repentance and atonement, all of which are required for holistic healing. And all of our respective faith communities have provided important modicums of these avenues for holistic healing. And conflict resolution requires broad-based engagement involving everyone, including women and youth. And the religious heart of a community is capable of mobilizing and inspiring them. So now we will go to hear the different perspectives of our panelists. And our next speaker is Mohammed El Sanusi. Mohammed, you now have the floor.
So thank you so much, Audrey. And, if you allow me to give the first to Asma to speak, because really I was speaking a lot in the past session. So I want Asma to begin this conversation.
Very excellent suggestion and idea. And I thank you for ceding your position to Asma, a true gentleman. Thank you.
Hopefully it will not be a response for my complaint for Muhammad. I was just asking the moderator to minimize his time because he already utilized his time in the morning. Thank you so much, Muhammad, to give me this privilege. His Excellency Professor Cole, dear Excellency, religious leaders and distinguished guests, I'm honored to just given the chance to speak in front of you here, especially regarding the role of religion in peace building and preventing conflict and resolving already happened conflicts. If all the followers of any religion knew properly their religious doctrines and follow the values of their religion properly, I believe that, and if they follow the golden rules, which were just told repeatedly in the morning session, I believe that we would be able to enjoy the hard copy of heaven while we are on earth here. So, but because I feel that there are some shortage in learning and knowing well what our religions are saying, there are lots of problems in the world. Many people think of peace as the absence of conflict or discord in their environment, but the current global definition of peace and the concept of peace in our respective religions are broader than this concept. Peace includes wholeness, welfare, safety, stability, tranquility, harmony in life, and good relationship with each other. It implies inner and external prosperity and well-being. In this regard, religions will have a high contribution in assuring holistic peace and peaceful resolution of conflicts, especially in the country like mine, Ethiopia, where almost all peoples have faith and religious affiliation due to the following reasons. First, as much as my knowledge concerns, all religions promote human dignity and human rights. Human dignity and the idea of all common humanity are the basis for true peace. As conflict and violence degrade in the dignity and personality of human beings, any believers who is guided by this principle will protect himself and others from being a means and or a victim of such action. Second, all religions oppose oppression and injustice. They peacefully defend this. All religions defend injustice in their localities and in the world, but in a peaceful way. There are always peaceful way of resolving and defending such actions. Therefore, if we have religious leaders who teach this principle to their followers, can inculcate these values in the believers, it would be possible to reduce the oppression and injustice that is currently challenging our world. Lastly, the most important thing is mankind listen and follow the religion she or he believes in and its leaders more than any earthly power. For this reason, religion had the potential to shape human personality and healthy relationship more than any secular education. But sometimes it's also dangerously will affect the community because of using this powerful future of religions makes it vulnerable for external actors like politicians and elite groups. Just they sometimes use this powerful future of religious leaders to just impose some political ideology and personal interest on the believers. So if religious leaders are not conscious enough, and if the followers are not well educated about the values and the doctrines of their religion, it might also affect the peaceful coexistence of the public. As part of the world, this fact also exists in Ethiopia. Most of the moral values, peaceful coexistence, and togetherness are learned in our religious institutions. Our religious leaders taught us how to be a very peaceful person, not our schools. For any kind of public programs, we look for our religious leaders' blessing to end up them peacefully. Whenever a conflict arrives in Ethiopia, in any community, in any ethnicity, and in any culture, we look for our elders, especially our religious leaders, to stop a conflict and just to create a conciliation between conflicting actors. Being passed through very complex and contested political scenarios in my country, listening to very biased information from our medias and reading very sided narrations from our intellectuals for the last decades, the country Ethiopia might not exist, and the people who are still living in harmony might not be still together if they did not follow their religious leaders' wisdom, if they did not believe in their religious value, and if they did not abide by the word of their creator. Our religious institutions always come to the front whenever the countries face a challenge, to call for peaceful way of conflict resolution, to promote justice, for togetherness and harmony, especially the platform created in the Interreligious Council, which bring all religious leaders together to have a common solution, a common ground for a peaceful coexistence of their followers, will have a very high significance. It is playing a very high significant role, and the Ministry of Peace is empowering and supporting this platform and other religious institutions to support us in any of peace building activities which we are doing in our country. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Asma. And you can see our timekeeper is sitting right there in the black top with the black mask right there. Brent, can you raise your hand? Thank you. So he's our timekeeper. Okay, thank you. So now we're going to move on. Mohammed, would you like to take the floor, or shall I put you at the bottom?
As you wish, your chairwoman, whatever
Right.
you.
You and Mohammed, you are next, please. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Audrey. And it's really good to have this session after lunch. I'm going to make 5 points, Audrey, if the time allows here. The first point, I want to agree with you. Now, the multilateral institutions and governments now recognizing the important role of religion and religious actors. These are now facts. I co-chair the United Nations Multi-Faith Advisory Council, and we try to work with the UN agencies and to bring the role of religion and religious actors. But it's not easy work to bring religion to secular institutions. These are realities. So, but we have to continue to pushing and making sure that the role of religions and the role of religious actors is really respected. This is point number one. But with this recognition of the multilateral institutions and government to the role of religious actors and religions, but religious institutions are not adequately equipped to actually do that role. So there is a problem. We need to find the best way to increase the capacity of the religious institutions so that they can do the work. And that's where the collaboration needs to happen. Also, in this point, we want to make sure that as we work with governments, the role should not be exploited, because we saw some governments also basically exploiting religion, using religious actors, promoting some religious actors for political purposes. Some of these religious actors may not have even a credibility in their communities. Now, having just recognized that, I want to say that religious actors and religions, we have a lot of theological documents that we could use to address conflicts and to promote peace. I will give you just one example here. For instance, this morning we heard about 1400 years ago when Prophet Muhammad in Medina came up with Mithaq al-Medina, the constitution in Medina. Now, in 2016, we came up with the Marrakesh Declaration, building on the constitution of Medina to talk about the right of religious minorities in the Muslim majority communities. And I know other documents, the Vatican II documents is clear. The Protestants came with, we have a lot of theological documents that we could use to basically advance the critical role of religion and religious actors. So utilization of our theological documents and theological heritage for peace and resolving conflict is very critical. Now, the third point I want to make is the collaboration between religious actors and government. I mentioned earlier the situation of Central African Republic. Since the conflict, I went to CAR 14 times. But the first time we went to CAR in 2013, we collaborated with the US government to do that because it was difficult for me to take a cardinal and the president of the National Associations of Evangelicals and major imam to a conflict zone unless I collaborated with government. And we did that. And just to tell you, the role of women was very critical. I mentioned the visit of the Holy Father, but do you know who mediated the conflict between Salika and Anti-Balaka to allow ceasefire, to allow the Holy Father to visit? Is an insider mediator woman. That role is very critical. And finally, we can do all of this, but we cannot do it without inclusivity. No one should be left behind. We need everyone around the table so we can achieve this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Muhammad Al-Sanusi. So our next speaker is going to be Pastor James Wuye. So Pastor James, you now have the floor.
Peace be with you all. I come from a position of being a former perpetrator of pains and evil against the other religion. I lost my hand in 1992 in my efforts in court defending the church against my Muslim brothers, and my Muslim brothers also defending themselves against the church. I have an artificial limb that I carry as a testimony of my past life. Having said that, I want to run quickly through the challenges we have. Probably it might resonate with you in your country, but I know, like in countries like Nigeria, where we have over 200 million people, we have mosques and churches at every nook and cranny of that church, yet that country, yet we are not as godly as the churches and religious structures that we have. Corruption has crawled into our holy places. Negative narratives, hate speeches has taken the front line. Bad governance, lack of political will by the government, sectionalism, unhealed memories of the past, pride, injustice, lack of inclusive religious education curriculum, non-repentance from our past, dogmatism, religious misappropriation, unforgiveness, unhealthy rivalry between religions, who is at the head and who is below. They will start asking you, How many Muslims do you have in the country? How many Christians? It's not about the number. It's about how infectious our love is for one another. Dichotomies coming from colonialism, cultural complexes that have eaten deep into our religious space. We also have negative solidarity. What happens in Sweden can have impact in our country, and people may die just because somebody did something, some said something somewhere. How do we, as a people, as a religious leader, stop this escalation through inclusive theology of communication? There are lingering challenges. Each time you, as a religious leader, go into a space to try to solve a challenge, another one springs there, another one springs in the other places. So you are left caught in the balance where people say, see what they have done, and see, you are still telling us to live in peace. So religious leaders have a great role to do. And I'm thinking that my recommendation for us here is that we should put up a mechanism for checking out excesses of our colleagues within the faith. We should bring about a bill that guides our speeches. I remember there is the Religion, Tolerance, and Hate Speech Bill, which we are promoting in Nigeria, to say if a religious leader ventilate anger and incite his people to violence, he should be held responsible and be punished. We are using the power of what we call divine intimidation strategy, where we invoke divinity to get compliance, and we intimidate followers to follow what we do, what we say, but not what we do. So how do we get this thing out of us? Is to begin to say, as religious leaders, we should begin to put on positive change and not shy away from talking about the challenges we have. Even within the faith, there are intra-religious challenges. Looking down on the other because he belongs to a certain sect is happening. We must deal with those things in order to be effective in our role as key players in bringing about peace and mitigating the challenges in our communities. Permit me to end with this. There is supposed to be a spiritual reawakening among ourselves. We need to deepen this conversation, take on subjects like other things that affect our people. As a religious leaders, you can use virtually every religion has the capacity to use contemporary issues that are facing the people to tweak it around. Why are we not tweaking it? Why are we not engaging? Why are we not declaring for the best for our people? And lastly, blessed are those who keep to time, for they shall be invited again.
Amen, Pastor. Okay, so now we're going to go to Emmanuel Ivorga. Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Audrey. Thank you, everyone. I'm really very grateful for the privilege to be here today. I think a lot has already been said, so I will not want to repeat what has been said already. I just want to provoke us and also to extend some few invitations. I don't know how many points I'll be able to share within this short time. But if there is any one of us here that does not have a religion, do we have anyone here? If you do not have a religion, I want to invite you to embrace one as quickly as possible, beginning from here. The president of Ethiopia, while addressing us earlier, made it very, very clear that the role of religion cannot be overemphasized. Religion is so important. Our world is currently in deep crisis, and this crisis is both spiritual and physical. Religion is the only thing that has the capacity to address this crisis holistically, both spiritually and physically. Because as human beings, we are both spiritual and physical. Science, and I must say this, why science and religion are not enemies, but symbiotic disciplines. There is a limit to which science can go, and there is also an extent to what religion can do. Science is not capable of addressing the spiritual crisis that confronts our world today. So if we are really interested in addressing the spiritual crisis that is manifested in the physical crisis that we see, then the role of religion becomes extremely, very, very important. The topic talks about religion, the role, and I think conflict and peace building. Maybe we should also look at, is religion a source of conflict? I don't think so. Religion is not a source of conflict, but religion is a source for solving conflicts. There are other things that are responsible for conflict. I think this attempt to blame religion all the time, or to blame religious people for being responsible for the conflicts that we have in our society, is placing the blame in the wrong places. I think from my experience, I come from Nigeria, and from what the work I do with URI, I've discovered that some of the crises that we see is as a result of what was said earlier in the previous session, I think by Mohammed also, the politicization of religion, and what I will add, the religionalization of politics. This has been the source of great conflict. When religious issues are taken into the domain of politics, I know that in some countries there has been an attempt to separate religion from politics. That has its own challenges also. Maybe I can explain this further. In the country where I come from, we practically dream, sleep, eat. Religion determines everything that we do. So we are so attached to our religions, and that attachment also makes us also vulnerable. So what happens is that politicians, especially, you know that in Nigeria now we have elections. So at the time of elections, politicians take advantage of our vulnerabilities and they exploit that. And it becomes a very big problem. Sometimes also, I think one of the major problems that I also see, I don't want to focus too much on this because of time. To become a medical doctor today, you will spend quality time in the university and in medical school studying to become a medical doctor. But what we see happening, especially across Africa, is the ease with which people become religious leaders. Somebody can sleep in the night and then receive a calling in the night, and he wakes up in the morning and becomes a religious leader. That is very, very dangerous, because with that kind of person, he or she is answering religious leader, but there is no exposure to sound doctrine. The person has not taken time. My understanding is that even if God calls you, there is time for preparation. I give a very good example. For you to become a Catholic priest today, and I'm sure a cardinal is there, he will understand this. For you to become a Catholic priest today, it will take you a minimum of 11 years after high school. 11 years after high school studied. So I think this area needs to be properly addressed also. I've just shared that, religion is not a source of conflict, but it contributes to dealing with conflicts that we have in our society. The other point I want to mention quickly, because I see the time raising there, religion through our religious leaders are guardians of public morality. And this is very, very important. Through that, it can help in addressing some of the social challenges that we have. I'm so sorry.
So thank you so much. Now we're going to go to Rawad Mayub.
Thank you, Chair. So my name is Rawad Mayub. I'm the director of A Common Word Among the Youth. So just a couple of minutes or less on who ACWE is. ACWE is a global youth movement. It's volunteer-led, youth-driven, and youth-led. I'm unfortunately just slightly over that age group, but I was amongst the young people when we first started ACWE. And I'm taking the position, unfortunately, of a young person who couldn't make it today due to a cancellation in the flight. So I hope I can do justice to his youthful nature. So, I mean, the panelists have obviously expressed the importance of the role of religion. And again, I don't think we have to keep emphasizing the importance religion has to play and religious actors, because I think, you know, it's quite clear, and we don't need to continue convincing ourselves and others of the role that religion and religious actors play, but it's important to remind ourselves and remind each other. And I like the point that Sister Asma made about, and it has to be said again and again, that if only if only I could practice my religion better, then I think the world would be in a more peaceful environment. But let me, with the time I have, just share a few words on the role of young people and the contribution of young people, those of faith and of religion in particular, since this is about the role of religion in peace building and conflict resolution. So at Akwe, we do three key things. One is we convene, we bring young people or more young people into the interfaith, interreligious, intercultural sector by convening forums, but we also support them, do some training to enable them to deliver local activities. So it's not just about talk, and we hear this a lot in these international forums. So it's about turning talk into action. And so these young people are tasked with going back to their home country after this international forum and delivering local community activities to bring communities together to foster understanding and respecting the other, but also to instill community service, to instill a level of active citizenship among young people. And the third thing we do is we try to provide young people with a voice at these international arenas, to give them the space to share their stories, to share their challenges and their experiences, and to work together with our respected elders in promoting peace locally. And similarly, like the concept or the issue of the role of religion in peace building, that we need not convince. I mean, the jury's not out on that. It's quite clear the contribution it's made. Similarly, with the role of young people and the role of youth in peace building, again, I'm conscious of not having to always talk about and give examples of young people and the important role they play, because it's quite clear and it's evident, and there's a lot of research on this. I cite one example that's relevant here, and that's actually a report, a study commissioned by the Peace and Security Council of the African Union in 2020, titled a study on the role and contribution of youth to peace and security. And you can have a look at that report. It's quite extensive and cites many examples of the kind of projects and activities and contribution young people are playing. And I'll give you a few examples. So in Cameroon, one of our young fellows, Clement, he did a campaign called Love Not Hate in the community. It was a series of weeks, but essentially it's about raising awareness of respecting the other and loving thy neighbor, and doing a street sort of peace walk, if you like, to bring others into the discussion. Another project cited in the report in Cameroon by the local youth corner in Cameroon called Spread the Love campaign. And that was about countering hate speech. An example in CAR, Central African Republic, by the Interfaith platform of Central African youth. That was looking at preventing and managing sectarian conflicts in the country. And there's many more examples. And I guess let me end with something slightly different, and that is because of the great work that's happening, this we heard already this morning and this afternoon, and we'll continue to hear in these fora, is that how do we capture the amazing work? How do we coordinate and collaborate and capture and communicate the great work that happens in this interfaith, intercultural, interreligious sector? There's so much going on, but how do we communicate that? How do we measure the impact, and how do we report on the impact of this great work that happens? And I'll end with this final point. And so at Akwe, we developed something called the Interfaith Development Goals, the IDGs, similar, if you like, to the concept of the UN SDGs. And these IDGs are 10 goals, and we sort of work with young people to try to contribute to one or more of these goals in the activities they do. So I'll end there, and I'll call on all of you to take part in contributing to the Interfaith Development Goals so we can capture all the great work that happens together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ambassador Hailu, could I just have a point of clarification? We started our session a little late. So can you give us the end time of what the session is at this point in time? We're supposed to start at 2:30. I'm sorry. Okay, so we can go until actually, if it's 2:30 to 3 is the break. And we now are already at 5 to 3. Is there a time adjustment that we can make? Ambassador. So I'm sorry. So we go to 3:20. Okay. All right. So we'll go until about 3:15, 3:20, and we'll just have to drink our coffee very quickly during our break. Okay. So now we'll open the floor to question and answer from the audience. So yes, this hand here and hand behind. So go ahead. Would you can take the floor. The gentleman right here.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you use the microphone, please?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I have clarifications, and then, of course, I want to ask a question. I heard from the panelists the issue of the use of religion, commenting from the president of the Ethiopian Republic, President Keynote Addis. Repeatedly, the use of religion is never minimized, and such kind of questions are ideas or concessions are raised. My question is, especially when it comes to Africa, is it the lack of religion or excess exaggeration of religion which is a problem in this country and then in other African countries? The second is, if religion is not a medicine, what is an option? Do you have another option? Should you go for another option in order to coexist or live in peace?
We'll address your first question first.
The first
because
question
it's
is
very complex.
Yeah.
So your first question, to whom would you like to pose the question?
The first question is it the lack of religion or over-exaggeration of religion which is a problem in Africa or even in other countries? That's a question. The first question is the exaggeration, over-exaggeration of religion or the lack, or that's my question. Because most of you mentioned that Africans are religion.
Pose your question on the panel.
For most of them raised the use of religion. Almost all of you.
Asma will answer that question. Go ahead, Asma.
All difficult questions directed to us.
Asma, can you turn that on? No, that's only the first question. We'll come back to your second question after she answers your first question, okay? Go ahead, Asma.
Yeah, just I'm responding based on my opinion. There is no written answer for your question. Just I will react based on my opinion. I don't think it's a lack of religion. There are the Orthodox religions in Ethiopia, especially. Islam is an Orthodox in Ethiopia. Christianity is most of Christianities are Orthodox here in Ethiopia. The problem is that we didn't teach the real doctrine and principles of the religion to the followers. Most of the followers in Africa follow their religion by inheritance from their family. They don't give enough to read and learn what is really the value of the religion. And they don't internalize it. And most of the time, most religious leaders nowadays come to front not for the religion, but for their personal benefit than for the religion, so that they are becoming victim of another politician. They are being used by the politicians not to just teach their religion, but to use their religion as a weapon or a tool to manipulate the society than just teaching the real value of the religion. The problem is we don't really know our religious value, and most of them who knows their religious value, they doesn't live it really on the ground. That's my answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you want to go ahead, Emmanuel?
Thank you. I think just to add to what she said, as we all know, religion is both personal as well as social. So your question talks about lack. Yes, lack in terms of understanding of what our religions truly teach us. I think that is the basic problem. You cannot give what you don't have. So many of us embrace religions. There is a concept in social psychology called mechanical solidarity. Many of us embrace religions just because the society, that is the religion practice in the society that we come from, or our friends practice that religion. So that is the way of doing things, and then we embrace it. But like I said earlier, religion's goal is towards personal transformation. And in the context of that personal transformation, you are also able to impact the society in which you live. So the lack of clear understanding, whether it is doctrinal issues or the purpose of religion itself, I hate to blame anybody as being responsible for any problem. Because if I, as an individual, truly understands what my religion is, nobody on earth can lead me astray. Nobody. So I can be led astray simply because I do not have a clear understanding or knowledge of what my religion teaches. This is very, very important. So if I decide today to embrace Islam, what is required for me is to do a proper study and have a clear understanding of what Islam is. Outside that, I think we are just wasting our time. So the religions are all available, but it's a lack of understanding and also commitment. I think, like we said, if we really want to place blame, which is what I don't like to do, I prefer to take responsibility for whatever goes wrong instead of blaming another person. I think the point we need to do, apart from study, is to be very, very honest and committed to the faith that we have embraced. Like I said, most of us embrace whatever form of religion purely because of mechanical solidarity that I mentioned earlier.
So thank you very much. And in the interest of fairness and to give other people an opportunity to also have the floor, I understand you have a second question, but can we come back to your second question after we have given the gentleman behind you an opportunity to ask his question? Thank you so much. And your name is? Okay, so sir, please, you now have the floor to ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Bishop Banda. I come from Zambia. I'm presiding bishop for the Pentecostal Assemblies of God Zambia and represent the Pentecostal Assemblies of Africa. And here working with the African Union Interfaith Dialogue Forum. Thank you very much for some very rich presentations. I just have a few comments to make. First, just a contribution towards us really placing value on a reminder of the history behind this week we commemorate. But with that in mind, that reminder should really move us to the second aspect. I make this appeal to us really to find practical ways of really building. We can sing only so much about our rich history and the great work done by stalwarts like Ambassador Hailu here and others to whom we're very grateful. So in the essence of time to build, I move to this third item. I would like to challenge us to think carefully about what others have already highlighted in the first session, going beyond the talking shop to actual action. Now, at that level, we have various layers. There are a number of organizations that we have here working. It would be good while we are at this forum to clarify the way we interact. If we do clarify that, we can cure the danger that we see in many other good organizations, which is a danger of just a bureaucratic tendency, depending on our standing or our financial capabilities, who is funding who. We bemoan that in a number of organizations out there. But as religious organizations, once we clarify how we relate to one another, and I'm coming short of having to mention all the names. Let me make my point. That will help us. Why? Because then we can work on synergies. Who is best placed to address what?
Thank you so much, Bishop Banda.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Can you please conclude?
Yes, so I must conclude. So in doing so, we will be asking ourselves in terms of relevance. So here's an example. We're sitting here. Somebody mentioned earlier the challenge in Congo. We've got the war in Ukraine. We had President Putin recently because he took opportunity of the West who are having challenges morally. He freely referred to the Holy Scriptures and talked about the values. Now,
Bishop Banda, thank you so much.
No,
really. We do have to give other people an
and I
opportunity
understand.
to speak as well. So if you could wrap it up in one sentence, I'd really appreciate it.
That's what I would like to do,
Okay,
if you
thank
give me the chance. So I would like us to be a little more timely and practical in terms of how do we intervene in things that are current at our various layers, given just the 3 levels I have outlined, so we can cure
Thank you so much,
talking
Bishop
shop
Banda.
syndrome.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Raise your hand. If not, then we will go back to the, I'm sorry, go ahead. You will have the floor and then we will return to you for your second question. Okay? Yes, you may have the floor. Question, please.
Yes, my question, not necessarily a question, but perhaps a general remark. I recall that someone mentioned earlier on about the United Nations working with, I think it was Muhammad Sanusi who mentioned about working with the United Nations. And then a couple of times, I think the issue was working with secular organization. I have 2 issues here. What is secular? My understanding is there are 2 ways to be secular. One is negative, i.e., the total absence of religion from whatever we do. And the second is the positive, i.e., inclusive of all religious consideration in. So when we refer to multilateral organizations as being secular, which one is it? Number 2, in the postmodern period, where we've been able to deconstruct all the meta-narratives, can someone, a person who sits in a secular multilateral organization, can make abstraction of his religious identity when considering anything that is supposedly neutral, benign? How far is that true? How far does that hold? Thank you.
Tana would like to take that question. Yes, yes, answer.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And this is really a discussion that we can continue talking about it. We understand the multilateral institutions like the UN and other institutions, they are not, described by all even Western government, described by one religion. So there is that separation between religion and what they do, right? That's the reality of it. So the question now is that the reputation of religions and religious actors in some of these institutions is not that good. The thinking is that religious actors and religions bring just problems. So let's just avoid the problem altogether. Not knowing that 80% plus of the population in this earth, they actually follow sort of religious affiliation. These are statistics. I'm not making them up. So there is a respect need to be done to the role of religion and religious actors. What we are trying to do in our work with the UN and other multilateral institutions, just to say that there is a huge potential within religion and religious actors. We need to find the best way to collaborate so that we can use the structure that's available for religious institutions in the world to carry and deliver and implement sustainable development goals. We know that political institutions, they come and go, but our houses of worships, they're not going anywhere. They are there, they have a direct connection with the masses. When we started working with the UN, and this is started with the Kofi Annan briefing 12 years ago, then the UN created an interagency task force on religion and development. Now it has about 35 agencies or more. From there, we suggested the Multi-Faith Advisory Council, but we call it the Multi-Faith Advisory Council of the Interreligious Task Force for Religions and Development. We don't even call it UN Multi-Faith Advisory Council because they don't want to say that, right? And the former Undersecretary Adam Diang, who was really working on the production of a plan of action for religious actors to prevent atrocities, to speak against atrocities that lead to crimes and all of that. This is not a joke, but to tell you, because Adama was supporting the role of religion, he was referred to in the UN that Adama himself became a religious leader, the undersecretary, right? So we're trying to navigate to tell the multilateral institutions, Western government, please work effectively with religious actors to promote what you would like to promote, because these people, they do have a direct connections. And I was happy to see actually the Secretary General of the UN in our meeting in Fez, Morocco in November, recognize what Pastor James and Imam Shafa are doing in Nigeria, right? So slowly and gradually, we are trying to get that message. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we will go back to your second question. No, finished? Okay, all right, thank you. Yes, the gentleman in the back, and then we will have the lady next.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, my name is Uday Basu. I'm coming from India. Now, I'm convinced as a citizen of India that it is not religion, but distortion of religion that is paying havoc, especially when religion is abused by politicians. Now, a recent case is the Cow Hug Day. This was declared by a department of the Indian government. This was an attempt to demonize Valentine's Day. And they issued an appeal to the people to hug the cow as an expression of love. Now, there was mimicry and lampoon everywhere. And one lampoon said, if you want to approach the cow will push you away with his horns. So there can't be any cow hug day. Now, this is one illustration of the distortion of religion. Now, what have you got to say on that? That is my question. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Pastor James.
Thank you very much. I come from a practitioner in the field. Most of the things discussed here, we listen and we put it on the ground and experiment on it. India, as you have said, somebody using a symbol of value to other people and putting it before others for them to accept. It's a way of creating or a kind of demonizing, subtly demonizing giving the dog a bad name that you may hit it back. We do a lot of that within the religious groups. It's unfortunate that that is not dealt with directly. But I want to say here that what we are discussing, all the UN talks and most of those policies that come from those top groups, how is it felt on the ground? For me, that is the question we need to answer as religious leaders. How do we implement this and turn the thing around so that we can measure the impact of our engagement? For instance, now, why is it not that we as religious leaders will not come together and address issues of climate change and let the person on the ground within the masjid, within the mosque, within the temple, know that he is impacting negatively for his behavior of us. But then what does the scripture say about this so that people begin to comply? For me, if there is any action to be taken, it's action that brings transformation. And on the ground, we may start from little pockets of places, but then it can take a global impact. There is some groups now who have cut down some cows just last week. The religious leaders went there in Jos, between Kaduna State and Jos in Plateau, where it's an epicenter of ethno-religious violence, superimposed on ethnicity and also issues relating to value. They went there and told them, this is what your scriptures say about this. And they are now talking about reconciliation. This is the kind of thing we want to see. Young people building back places they have destroyed before, invited, and say, okay, we don't fight again. And the basic is that let's forgive. And forgiveness is reciprocal. When you do it with all your heart, you get a response. Because talking, yes, talking is good, but what do you act as you talk? That is for me what I want to put across.
Thank you so much. Final question from the lady in the black. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. My name is Despina Namwembe. So religious leaders are fighting each other because they want the big numbers. The political actors are fighting to go and get those numbers to their own advantage. The time they go on fighting on the side of the religious leaders, when they fight for the big numbers and they hate each other in the process, they are doing extremism. And the religion and the political leaders on the other side are doing what we call confusion. So I wanted to ask anybody, and I know my brother Emmanuel and the pastor talked a little bit about that. What do we do like to ensure that we are controlling, we are moderating these extremism ideas without infringing on people's freedoms of worship? Thank you.
Would like to answer? Go ahead.
Yes, please. Where your freedom ends, there begins the other person's freedom. And religious leaders should watch out for this kind of things, because sometimes we congregate, not because we have true interest in the souls of the people. The more you have a crowd, the more influence and powerful you are. And consequently, the more richer you are when you are in certain sphere of leadership. I have a challenge with religious leaders casting mods on the other. It is not about what I say, but the life I live. People have heard us preach severally, but are we living by those things we preach? And I think in Africa, we should have a competition. And that competition is to outwit one another in the principles of love, which also is captured, is do unto others what you will want others to do to you. If we have that, there will be no fighting, because I know where my freedom ends, there begins the other person's own. And religion is not about tolerance. Religion is about accepting the differences and massaging where it ache and pain, and then moving forward. I cannot impose, you cannot impose. Let's have a balanced ground where you respect mine, I respect yours. You accept me, I accept you. Nobody is inferior, nobody is superior. And our traditions, most of the religions say, I am the best. There is no true religion. For instance, this too quickly, there is no true religion in the world but Islam. And Jesus said, I am the truth, the way, and life. Nobody goes to the Father. We are all marketing our truth. But until we get on that gate, Coca-Cola and Pepsi will keep to drinking them. But when we get to the gate, they will know which one is genuine. So let's live together and practice and try to influence by love, not by hate.
Thank you so much. We have just been notified that our time is up, and so we would not be able to have our conclusory comments. But I wish to thank all of the audience who came to this session and all of our panelists. And thank you so much for listening to us and engaging with us. And we look forward to your participation in the remaining panels. Thank you so much, everyone, and please enjoy the balance of the conference. Thank you.
So, dear brothers and sisters, now we will have break for half an hour from 3:30 to 4 p.m. And the panel session, the third panel session, key issue facing Africa environment, sustainable development, will take place here at Nelson Mandela Hall from 4 to 5. Then the parallel session will take on session number 2, human dignity and freedom of religion or belief as a foundation for interfaith harmony. Then from 4 to 5 p.m., we were supposed to have break. So if we can go with your permission for the conclusion, and instead of taking another half an hour, I think it will make more sense to use our time effectively. If it is the agreement in the House, we can go accordingly. Thank you.
Can you repeat that?
Also, I would like to inform you, for those of you who need translation, this is the only, the Nelson Mandela Hall is the only access we have for translation. The session 2 is only in English.
Okay, good afternoon. If we can, it is 4 o'clock. So if we can take our seats, and please, if you are on the panel, can you join us up here? If you're on the panel, please join us up here. Thank you. Are you Muhammad? Alhamdulillah. This is session 3. This one? Yes, sir. Okay, this is the end. Good. Please. Once again, you all welcome. My name is John Azuma, and I come from Ghana, and I work at the Sane Institute in Accra, and I'm also a visiting professor at Yale University. And we are here to help us initiate some conversations around the whole topic of key issues facing Africa, mainly in the areas of environment and sustainable development. And I have on this panel distinguished persons and who are more knowledgeable in this area that we will hopefully be hearing from, and we will be given the chance also to make some interventions and contributions and questions. And so, just by way of kicking off, as I said, I'm John Azuma. We have Tekele Tesfom. Kele's here. Just at the right time. We have Christina, Tobias, Nahi. Christina is here. And then we have Karik Redden. Karik is there. Thank you. And Rawat Mariab is given his spot to Muhammad Dahab, who is here from, you have represented, sorry, you have coming from
The Elevate organization.
the Elevate organization, yes. Yeah. And also we have Bilal Madubat, yeah. And then we have Meredith Bill. Thank you. So just by way of kicking off this conversation, the whole issue of environment and sustainable development is central to Africa and to the world indeed. And in traditional African religion, if you talk about the environment, or you're talking about creation, or you're talking about the earth, in many African languages, the term used for the creation of earth is Mother Earth. And to talk about taking care of the earth or the creation or the environment, it's to the traditional African, it's like asking someone to take care of your mother, because we feed off the earth. The earth nurtures and takes care. Without the earth, we will not be here. The earth is where we draw our nourishment from. And so from that perspective, the earth is very, very important to be taken care of. But also speaking from our own religious, be it Islam or Christianity or most of the other religions also, the earth or creation did not just appear accidentally. Creation is here as a result of an intentional act of the creator. And therefore the earth has a creator. And we are custodians of that earth, and we are called upon by our various religious traditions to take care of this creation that God, or whatever we call that entity in our traditions, has gifted us with. And so we are here to discuss how we are called upon as religious people from within our African context and perspectives to take care of the environment, and also ideas about how we can work towards sustainable development in Africa. And so with those opening remarks, I'm going to open it up for my colleagues here to share about 3 to 5 minutes each. And then we open it up for conversations from you. And then we can also come back for the panel to summarize or to round up. So I will kick off by calling upon Christina to start and share a little bit from and Christina is from the Islamic Relief USA.
Thank you. I was actually asked to join this panel today to give a little bit of perspective as a faith NGO. It may not be exactly beginning with the climate and the environment, but we will get there roundabout, and you will see where I'm going with this. So I'm with Islamic Relief, and we are a worldwide federation. We're in about 40 to 60 countries, depending on the contextual, what is going on in the world, whether it's natural disasters or conflicts. And I wanted to speak a little bit to the challenges as well as the opportunities of being a faith-based organization in this space, as well as to give just a couple of illustrative examples of some real interfaith we're doing today. And in the morning sessions, we spoke a lot about not just doing interfaith dialogue, but walking the walk and working with those of other faiths in actionable sectors. And so I just wanted to touch on a couple of those. In terms of challenges, one obviously that you could conceivably understand is, given a name like Islamic Relief and working in a lot of the countries where we do, that in itself presents a challenge, whether it's, stigmatization, Islamophobia, especially in a lot of the Western countries where we're working. And that with it also entails certain things, because we work in a lot of conflict areas and we're transferring funds. We have also, issues with banking and transferring monies to those we serve in these very vulnerable communities and in these conflicts. However, being in a faith NGO also presents us with a lot of extraordinary opportunities. As mentioned, we have access in a lot of these conflicts that many other international NGOs would not have the ability to get in and to deliver in the way we do. I actually have a colleague here from Islamic Relief Ethiopia, which is one of our federated partners. And we were talking today just about working on the border of Ethiopia and Somalia and how a lot of organizations are not able to do that work, but we are because we're from the faith community. We live that and we can go in without fear of reprisal. The other thing that is an opportunity for us is we have the ability to work with faith leaders, both those of the Muslim faith and those of other faiths as well. And then for those of us living in the G20 countries, we have that access to policymakers, and we take that seriously, that custodianship of having that privilege. And one of the reasons we like to work with our partners in these countries that are doing the real grassroots and the difficult work is to take those voices back and to bring that to the policy leaders. And we've talked about that a lot as well today, about bringing the grassroots to the advocacy and to the policymakers. So just a couple of illustrative examples, because I don't want to monopolize, but here in Africa, on the continent, we've got a partnership with Episcopal Relief and Development. That's in Liberia. We're working with faith leaders, both those of the Muslim faith and then Christian pastors, and we're going into communities. We're working on gender-based violence. We're working with men and boys. So that's one example of a collaborative project. Another one also on the continent is in Central Africa Republic. Islamic Relief and Catholic Relief and World Vision, which is a Protestant, more Orthodox organization, all were working together at the eruption of the conflict, showing how organizations of faith can work together as a model to bring communities together. And then finally, a last one that I'll mention here as well, and it's not here on the continent, but it is with HIAS, which is a Jewish NGO. We work with refugee resettlement and legal services on the island of Lesbos in Greece. Now, the reason I bring that up is the last time I was there were many Africans that were there. So not just, what the media shows us of Afghanis and Syrians, but many who had come from the continent of Africa. And we hear about all of these drownings. There was one this week off of the coast of Italy, a boat overturned and we lost many lives. But you probably didn't hear about the one that happened in October just outside of Lesbos, and those were all women of African descent. So it's very important that at these forums we have the ability to have these African voices in the space at the G20. As we know, the refugee crisis is the worst it's ever been since after World War II. Africa has hosted traditionally up to 1/3 of the world's refugees, although with Ukraine and Venezuela, that is slightly changing, but we need to have people at the table to talk about this work and these very important critical voices. And the very last thing that I will say is, we've also heard about some of these new policies that are going through the court and legal systems. For example, in the UK, they want to take the refugees that have come to resettle, and if they are not accepted into that resettlement process, they could potentially be sent to Rwanda. And right now that's been going through a legal case, whether that constitute a legal process for refugees. So we will see, but I think it just shows how interconnected we all are and why we need to come together. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you very much. So we invite Tekele Tashom to also share with us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you all know, Africa is the richest in terms of natural resources, but these natural resources are heavily at risk because of climate change. If you don't understand the magnitude of the climate change affecting Africa, probably we may not respond at commendable levels. Many of the challenges in Africa is related to air pollution, where significant number of untimely deaths are attributed to air pollution. For instance, according to the recent assessment of NASA, about 780,000 Africans are facing premature deaths because of air pollution. And the same holds true for natural disasters. For instance, some parts of Africa are heavily affected by flood, and the other part of the continent is affected by drought, particularly the Eastern Africa. And these disasters, floods, and hazards are actually the results of climate change. When you think of water pollution, as you all know, the potable water supply for Africa is inadequate, and the majority of the communities are fetching water from rivers, from ponds, which are heavily contaminated from upstream users. And this results in severe waterborne diseases like diarrhea, dysentery, polio, and name it. And these challenges has to be really notified, understood to make an appropriate response. And the other critical challenge is deforestation, because we do not have adequate power supply. About 600 million of Africans are without electricity. And because we don't have power sources, we rely on biomass. We cut trees for construction. We cut trees for farm implements, for firewood, and then charcoal. As this has depleted the soil fertility, eroded the biodiversity, and leading even to more disasters. When you also think of the biodiversity, as temperature increases, as global warmings and extreme weather heightens its magnitude, the biodiversity is going to be extinct. And we lose our biodiversity, which are irreversible. Our tourism potentials, our genetic potentials will be eroded. And when we also see the challenges of climate change is not affecting different segments of the community equally. Its impact is disproportionate. For instance, if we see women, children, the elderly, persons with disabilities, urban dwellers and rural dwellers, the developed countries, the developing countries are affected disproportionately. And this calls for a climate justice. Unless we assign policies, implement actions, strategies to really support those who are terribly affected and give justice to those more marginalized, more affected, then the problem, the magnitude of the problem will even be much worse, because they are already marginalized and the climate change will also affect them. And this really demands an integrated effort, collaboration, continuous research, linkage between disaster risk management and climate change adaptation, research and in various fields, in disasters, in climate change, underlying causes, so that we will give an informed, we'd advocate to the government to take informed decisions. The response for climate change is not really unidirectional. We need to respond at individual level. We need to respond at an institutional level. What, as an individual, what have you done to mitigate the impacts of climate change? What responsible decision have we made in terms of cutting trees, in terms of waste management, in terms of even the way we eat, the way we dress? We are responsible for that. So we have to start the climate change responses at an individual level. And we have to also to take it at an institutional level, at professional level. What are we doing as an institution, as a group of researchers, as a group of academia, as a group of activists and the like? This combined effort can really and make a difference. And the last point in this response is the political group, the government. Unless the government issues appropriate climate in sensitive policies, strategies, not only providing policies, but also translating those policies into actions, engaging multi-stakeholders, including those affected by climate change, we will not have a substantive impact. Therefore, at an individual level, at an institutional level, at political level, even the future of political leaders' election probably might be based on the actions they have taken to prevent climate damage, to bring harmony, to prevent conflict, and then the like. So it can be even the parameter for choosing our politicians. The parliamentarians should really discuss and understand the place where they have been elected and bring the issues into the parliament, establish standing committees, allocate adequate budgets to respond to those challenges. Unless we put such integrated effort, probably the climate change can create more damage than we are facing at the moment. At this point, it is also crucial to really involve the younger generation. As has been said in this morning, about 60–70% of the population in Africa are the youngsters. If we ignore them, if we don't engage them in policy dialogues, in climate change negotiations like COP26, 27, and name it, then the future belongs to them. The leadership is going to be moved to them, and their involvement is very crucial. So our response should be synchronized, integrated, and synergy has to be developed to address the complex challenge.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much. And the young people are already leading us in this endeavor anyway. And we have to make sure we end at 5 o'clock. That is the instruction I've been given. So we've got to manage the time and make sure that we get the input from you guys, and then we can make sure we end at 5 o'clock. Can I call upon Bilal to make your remarks also? Thank you, Bilal.
Okay, thank you. You know, I've had so many statistics, numbers, figures that I would have wanted to give you on education, SDG 14, etc., but I get the feeling that this would be too boring. So you know what I'm going to do? We're going to leave all this apart, and I'm going to talk to you about something, a scenario of what is actually happening, which will drive home a number of points and maybe get you to think about things that you don't even think when it comes to climate challenges, etc. And that is contraceptive pills. You may be wondering what this has to do with climate change. Well, I'm talking of the use of contraceptive pills in the context of Mauritius. You know, we in Mauritius, we started using these in the late 60s. And we've been so good at it that we've managed to do in 30 years that France was not able to do in more than 100 years, which is why our population now is only at 1.2 million. And our fertility rate is 1.3 per woman. The normal one should be 2.1. So we are very good at it. That's not the issue. The issue is, you know, contraceptive pills contain hormones, women hormones, namely estrogen and progestin. Now, you know what happens is these hormones that you have in contraceptive pills, they are not natural, they are man-made. And then when a woman take these, what happens is that, well, it gets into the body, and then at some point through the liver, it is being metabolized and then discarded. But very often what happens is that women having liver problems or having kidney problems, etc., These hormones are not metabolized, and then obviously they go into the urine, and then from the urine they go into, the toilet, and then the toilet, from there it goes where it needs to go. Now, where is the problem? The problem is that Mauritius is a volcanic island. Being a volcanic island, it means that our soil in different layers are very porous. When soil are porous, it means that used water, sewage, etc., when it gets in, you know what happens? It begins to seep underground. The issue is that we in Mauritius, we started to have sewage management, wastewater management, etc., in the late 90s. So meaning that from the 1960s until the late 1990s, all these hormones in contraceptive pills, and also, a number of times these pills are expired, so because the government buys so many of them, and so you have to so what we did was we just put them into landfills. And when you put them into landfills, and you have them running into the toilet, not being metabolized, so all these estrogen and progestin in these pills, you guess what happened? So they get, with water, floods, etc., these hormones get into the porous core of the soil, and guess where they land? In boreholes. And in Mauritius, we get 60% of drinking water from boreholes. The question now is, when we do quality assurance for the quality of water that we drink, do we test for levels of hormones in these water? No, we don't. Why don't we? Because the quality assurance model that we have been given or have been imposed on us, test for bacteria, for things like diarrhea, and but no one tests about the level of hormones in these water. The question is, when young boys in adolescence drink these water, with perhaps we don't know how much is the level of females' hormone, estrogen and progestin in these water, what impact does this have on young African men? Have we ever thought about that? So the issue here is Africa. What I'm trying to drive point here is that Africa, the main challenge insofar as Africa is concerned, it's not a challenge of resources. We have an abundance of it, and we even let people loot. It's not so much of a challenge of capacity. We have the capacity looking at the people that we have. The main challenge of Africa is a challenge of cognition, of our cognitive ability. Are we thinking enough? Are we thinking hard enough? Are we thinking out of the colonial box? Only when we do that will things start to fall in place. And until then, things will keep falling apart. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bilal. It was very, very revealing and almost scary. Very, thank you. Meredith, please.
Good afternoon, sisters and brothers. I'd like to thank the organizers of this very important event for allowing me to share. I have two topics. The role of African media in moving the populace forward, and number two is the missing agents of change. The African media community has a critical role to play in coverage of environmental action and promoting awareness around sustainable development. The African Media Initiative has recommended the creation of a network of reporters continent-wide who specialize in reporting on climate change, sustainable development, and environmental advocacy. At least 3 reporters in every African nation is what we're looking for. Reporters in every African country. We also call on the owners and leadership of the African media organizations to make space in their publications and time on their radio and TV programs for this important contribution to humanity. My second point is the missing agents of change. The missing agents of change has been mentioned a number of times over the course of today's proceedings, is the youngest demographic group, those under 20. As we know, 70 to 75% of African population is under 30. If that huge population is not engaged in environmental awareness and promoting appropriate behavior in that regard, we will not achieve our goals. We must drastically magnify the scale of engagement. That means that environmental awareness and promoting sustainable behavior must be injected into the curriculum in schools all over the world, starting at the bottom, at the youngest demographic in kindergarten. We can't wait till people are 20 years old before they know how to behave. I call on UNESCO, the United Nations, and the ministers of education around the world to address this gap in human education. Learning how to be human must include respect for oneself, respect for others, and respect for the environment. And the environment includes our bodies. Remember that the first sacred site is the human being. So let us drastically magnify this level of engagement among young people to leverage their energy, creativity, and humanity for the benefit of the world. We see a lot of activity in maybe the college age people, but it has to start in primary school. Before people become 10, 12 years old, they need to know what's appropriate and inappropriate behavior. They can also be effective in influencing their parents. So this awareness needs to start early. It needs to be, again, injected in the curriculum everywhere on the planet. And there needs to be a concerted effort to do so. So I brought to the attention of UN Environment some years ago that we have 7 years now to the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Back in 2019, I approached them with the fact that, okay, we have 10 years to go, and the youngest demographic that I saw addressed in United Nations environment programs has been college age. So this huge population beneath that needs to be engaged in this campaign. So, Amen Sakanalo, Asante Sana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those comments that again drawing our attention back to the younger generation, especially within the African context. Thank you. And shall we now call upon Mohammed Dahab to make your comments and then.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Mohammed Dahab. I'm from Khartoum, Sudan. I am the president and founder of the Elevate organization. The Elevate organization is a humanitarian developmental NGO working in the fields of health, education, and self-reliance. And we have a special focus on sustainable development projects. And I'll say that again because it is our raison d'être. It is why we exist. We exist almost purely to implement sustainable development projects. We have a small mandate regarding emergency intervention and such. I should have mentioned we're based in Khartoum, Sudan. And as many of you may know, Khartoum, Sudan is a country that is still well on its way to in the path of development. And as a project implementer, it's been a pleasure to hear my fellow panelists speak. But as someone who is on the ground, as someone who is a project implementer, we are where the road hits the ground. We are the ones on the ground, building the hospitals, building the schools, digging the water wells as such. So all of these efforts we see here today, many of the panelists and many of the panels spoke about the general or the strategic importance of different stages of development, of different stages of humanitarian intervention. But Elevate is the one who takes all of this and focuses it on actually implementing projects and programs. And as a project and program implementer, let me say this. the humanitarian developmental field, especially for us project implementers on the ground, we're facing a myriad of problems, issues, challenges, many of them environmental, many of them synthetic, many of them man-made. But I think the biggest issue we're facing now is the fact that we are now the humanitarian developmental climate itself, or context or atmosphere is changing. And it's adapting. But the question is, where will it end up? The question is, how will it adapt? What will be the conclusion of these different forums and meetings and calls for reform? Even the United Nations is facing calls for reforms, and the United Nations has embraced this idea. And many world bodies, many large NGOs and international organizations and smaller organizations have embraced this call that change must happen to provide more effective developmental projects and programs on the ground. In order to deal with these current issues we're facing. And these issues are multi-pronged. There are many, from donor fatigue to acceptance even, which my fellow panelists touched upon a little bit earlier. So I will keep this short. We as project implementers, we tend to like things to be direct and to the point. So I will carry on that proud tradition and say this: we need to have more dialogue, yes, but we also need to find avenues in which to channel these dialogue, these great ideas, this fantastic energy needs to be challenged into tangible, on the ground results and action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Thank you. And with that, we now call upon Carrick Redden to give us the last word on this round. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon. Hopefully got a little bit of attention in these last 15 minutes or so of this panel. I'm very proud today to be representing World Resources Institute. WRI is a global research organization that turns big ideas into action. It's committed to making a better world where people can meet their essential needs, where nature is restored, and where the climate is stable. WRI has over 1,800 staff working across 60 countries on topics of food, forests, water, cities, climate, energy, economics, finance, and more. It includes over 100 staff working in areas of vital landscapes, thriving resilient cities, institutional change across Africa, including here in Addis, in Nairobi, Kigali, Kinshasa, and beyond. 2 years ago, WRI launched the Faith and Sustainability Initiative. This initiative seeks to pursue and tap the enormous potential of faith-based organizations and religious leaders to advance environmental sustainability by supporting faith actors in undertaking timely, informed, coordinated, evidence-based action, leveraging their assets, their enormous potential in communities to make a better world for people, nature, and climate. I want to take 2 minutes to share just an illustrative example of the work that WRI Faith and Sustainability is doing in partnership with WRI Africa, our food program, and KAICID, specifically looking at the role of faith-based organizations in addressing food loss and waste, promoting food security and nutrition in Rwanda, building on WRI Africa's flagship Curbing Africa's Food Loss and Waste. A little bit of background on food loss and waste. Globally, about 1/3 of food is either lost post-harvest or thrown away by consumers. Estimates show that recuperating food loss in Africa would be able to feed approximately 48 million people annually. In Rwanda, food loss and waste is approximately 40%, represents 21% of the country's land use, 16% of its greenhouse gas emissions, and a 12% loss to Rwanda's GDP. I wish that one of our colleagues in Rwanda who's doing the work on the ground could be here. Unfortunately, due to conflicts, you're stuck with me, so thank you. And so in this work, we're really in this first stage of research, reaching out to all faith-based organizations in Rwanda, having the opportunity to work with the team of His Grace Cardinal Kambanda, as well as others, in order to understand what are the barriers and opportunities to impact, what interventions would be most effective in supporting religious communities' contributions to our national and global goals on reducing food loss and waste. SDG 12.3, the Malabo Declaration, the Africa Union's Agenda 2063, Rwanda's nationally determined contributions, all of which point to reductions in food loss and waste in order to support food security and promote the nutrition of the people. While this work is still ongoing, there's a few recommendations that are emerging that I want to share with you, because I think they're relevant not just to our work on food systems in Rwanda, which we hope might scale to the continent and even globally, but also as we consider making recommendations to the G20, and even as we consider taking on projects across the sustainable development spectrum. Those recommendations include developing enabling environments politically and legislatively for the participation and substantive participation of faith-based organizations, delivering the data and research for evidence-based interventions that bridge the gap between policymakers, civil society, donors, and faith-based organizations so that the spectacular work you're doing can be funded and held accountable for the outputs and outcomes that it purports to make. Indeed, supporting funding and capacity building for faith-based organizations and connecting those dots to the other actors within the sustainable development sector so that it is a natural situation that the faith actor, the religious leader, is invited to the table to have conversations about food security, about human well-being, about environmental sustainability, and finally, coherence and coordination among stakeholders. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and very much look forward to the opportunity to be working with you all in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrick. And with that, we will now invite your comments, questions, and remarks. And we have about 10, 15 minutes to do that. Yes.
Thank you, panelists. What has been shared is passionate to me. I want to ask in practical terms, like the young man said, what are the things on the ground? But he also responded that there are issues that they are doing on ground in Rwanda. Sir, as an influencer, a faith-based influencer, is there a way that there will be a day, a tree planting day for all faith leaders around the world to say, today we take a pause and plant trees, starting for our children to the oldest, using faith to motivate these actions. Both in our faith traditions, there are encouraging things that say plant a tree. How do we do that as one step out of the many? How do you provide also for grassroots people other alternatives to saving the destruction, the waste of food in Africa in particular? We see wastage all over, trees falling and nobody is doing anything, chopping down trees for firewood. And what are the other alternatives that we can provide to local people to stop chopping down trees for fuel using faith-based approach? Simple one thing, sir, a minute, sir, or seconds, a few seconds. 3 years ago, I went to preach somewhere and I say a covenant with the people and say plant a tree from the one behind and the child, and they should plant mango trees and orange trees. 3 years later, they were exporting trees, mangoes to this local market and oranges to the local market. It healed the land and also provided resources. Are there strategies like that we can use as faith people, through faith, to say, do this and see an action? That's what I want to ask. If there are manuals or documents, I'd like you to share with us, please.
Can I respond? Yeah. There's one very powerful example that emerged out of the UN Environment Conference that took place a few years ago. The Association of Preachers and Imams in Kenya came to an agreement that they would plant a tree every time they did a wedding, a funeral, a child naming ceremony, a baptism, or whatever. If you can imagine every church, every temple, every synagogue, every mosque around the world, every time they did an event, planting a tree, something that simple, how quickly we could have some healing effects.
If I may. And if I may add to my colleague's answer, I completely agree. I think with regards to planting tree and these other small yet very effective initiatives that have a profound effect on not just the economy, but on development, it is a question of will. as my panelists kindly reflected, it is a question simply of will. There is some question of logistics, that is true, but it's mostly a question of will. And that is the answer it is a question of galvanizing and motivating young people, and not just young people, but people of all ages, in order to be more willing to give up their time, their energy, and their resources for the benefit of the environment and for the benefit of the community. Thank you.
Very briefly, I think from some of the things I've learned, there's enormous traditional and indigenous knowledge, particularly on this continent, that teaches us lessons of how to do this. There's kaya forests in the Congo Basin. There's almost forest islands in Ethiopia where entire areas have been forced under desertification, except these areas around houses of worship. I think we have a real responsibility within the development sector, not the faith-based sector, to learn from faith actors about the habits they've already been doing to carry this work forward. And that's a responsibility I want to take back to those actors that are on the World Resources Institute side, to learn from you all about how to do this work.
Yeah,
Yes.
I want to add a couple of points related to Ethiopian experience. I mean, the idea of having one tree planting day across the globe is really appreciable, and that can be done. From Ethiopian experience, I mean, if the leadership has a political commitment and attempts to mobilize its people, it's possible, because the Green Legacy Initiative of Ethiopia, led by the Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, can testify this, because over 20 billion seedlings have been planted in the past 4 or 5 years. The other avenues for really expanding tree planting is schools. We have school environmental clubs, and we raise seedlings in schools. During the closure of the school, we mobilize university students, high school, elementary students, and engage them in planting. That will have a tremendous multiplier effect. And then the other thing is the faith-based organizations. In Ethiopia, planting trees around churches, particularly the indigenous species in scarce places, in faith-based organizations, nobody will cut them, because that's considered as sin. Cutting trees around the church, around the faith-based institutions, is really unacceptable. So the faith-based organizations can mobilize their own constituencies. Students can be mobilized, and if the senior leadership is really committed to plant millions and billions of seedlings, it's possible. And the other point I want to reflect is the how can we prevent the destruction of forest for charcoal, for firewood. Again, I'm reflecting from Ethiopia's perspective. We boast to say Ethiopia, a country of 30 months of sunshine. We have 30 months of sunshine potential, but how far we have utilized the solar energy is really questionable. We claim to have the largest population of livestock compared to the other countries, but how far have we utilized the biogas energy is really a question. So we tend to neglect what we have, but we need to inventorize what we have, what the challenges face, and how those opportunities can be, and those challenges can be changed into opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A quick comment from Bilal, and then we come
Yes,
back to
a quick comment. Pastor James, I would like to pick up on the point of waste. I would like to give you a concrete example of what a faith-based organization, which I'm part of, called Kids in Mauritius, what we do. You know, in Mauritius, tourism sector is big. And one of the biggest waste sector in Mauritius is the tourism industry. So what Kids has done, Kids has been collaborating with an NGO called Foodwise. Now, Foodwise, what they do is they go to all these hotels and supermarkets, and they collect, like, you know, when food that are not being used or food that we know are going to be expired, get all these. Then allocate these food to specific NGOs dealing with vulnerable people, women and children, and then give them for free. So in that way, we've been able to do fantastic things. Thank you.
I will take 3 comments at a time, and then the panelists will just make brief comments, and then we have to close at 5. Please, at the back there. Yes.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. And I'm so happy with what is being said. I think coming to my mentor, Pastor Oye, it can be possible if we today in this place can come out and say that every year, 1st of January, we'll be planting tree globally and it be declared a tree planting day globally. If people do it, that's okay. If they don't, leave it, but we declare it, number 1. Number 2, my brother talked about us start teaching our children moralities and respect and the rest. But that was so good. But I heard him talking of something UNHCR, something like that. I think from now, we need to start coming out with African problems solved by Africans. Because I think the West need us to go and teach them morality currently, especially on the issue of LGBTQ. The 3rd thing is the issue of religious leaders and influence. We Africans are notorious religious, as Professor Mbidi said, but I don't understand how Africans, when it comes to power, they are overruled by the people in power. We religious leaders keep on saying that our power does not diminish, because when I became a religious leader 17 years back, I'm still a religious leader till I die. But a politician will lose their seat. How comes then they can influence people negatively and we are quiet? The final one, so they don't speak too much. Religious education is very important. I was taught by my sheikh when I was 5 years old that I should not throw any seed I get in this world. Since that time, I always take seeds wherever I go, even in 5-star hotel. I eat any fruit, even today in the morning, I will collect the seeds, put them in my pocket, go and plant them anywhere. Can we start telling our children and doing the same everywhere without fearing anyone? Thank you. God bless you. Your brother, Dr. Sheikh Hassan Kenyomari, Interfaith newspaper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take a comment from the back and then we'll take the last comment from here. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I'm from India. My name is Uday Basu. A few years back, I met a lady in Salt Lake City, Utah, USA. She belongs to an Afro-American ethnic group. Now, she told me that in their ethnic religion, there is an important aspect of worshiping nature. And they use that aspect to stop felling of trees in the forests. And thereby, she lives in the Alaska region. Thereby, they were able to fight this denudation of forests. I mean, can't we tap religions to save nature that way? That's my question.
Thank you very much. The last comment, and then from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Rawad Mahib from A Common Word Among the Youth. But I'm putting my aid, or so-called aid and development hat on. And as has been said a couple of times today, and this is common knowledge, that Africa is the richest resourceful continent in the world, but yet the poorest continent in the world. So it's very difficult to get our heads around that. And so in keeping with, I think, Brother Bilal's comment or phrase about thinking out of the colonial box, I would ask that we think about the concept of decolonization of aid and development, to turn the table so that Africa is not the poorest continent in the world when it shouldn't be. And the decolonization of aid and development and humanitarian action, resource mobilization, etc., is something that's not often talked about. It is in the humanitarian sector to a certain extent, more so now than before. So I guess my question is to the African Union, what would be the strategy at the African Union level in the decolonization of development? and to local and national NGOs and INGOs and donor countries to look at not shifting, but for the local and national NGOs and institutions to reclaim the power, decision-making power that belongs locally, to claim the finances that's owned by the locals and it's for the locals, and ensuring that they are at the table at the international level so that the local NGOs lead, the national NGOs lead the development agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to give Christina a chance to make a comment if she so wishes, and then we have to wrap up. Thank you.
I guess I'll just end where I started. I had promised to tie it all together. So I brought up the issue of refugees, and there are push factors and there are pull factors. We talked a lot today about economics, and that is obviously a pull factor of why we've got migration on a global scale. But one of the biggest push factors is climate change. Whether it's, people are living in inhabitable places due to these extremes of weather and floods and droughts and you name it, as well as it drives more conflict when these resources then become scarce. So I just want us to, tie together all of these thematic areas that the panelists brought up into kind of this cyclical, we can't think of them independently, they're all interconnected.
We have a minute. If someone has something that if you don't say it, the sun will not rise tomorrow, you can say it.
Not really. But I really appreciate the comment, the last comment about the national NGOs taking the leadership. In fact, there are improving trends these days. If you remember the grand bargain or localization of aid, that is to promote the leadership or to make the partnership on equal footing between international and national NGOs. When you think of disaster risk management, it entails the pre-disaster phase, which takes preparedness, mitigation, prevention as one phase, pre-disaster phase. That is also a climate risk. If you really do good in prevention, in preparedness, in mitigation, the disaster may not occur. And if it occurs, we will keep it minimal. So the linkage between different sectors or different policies really plays a greater role. So linking disaster risk management with climate change adaptation and tapping the opportunities of the grand bargain. If the international communities, they really showing interest to materialize this, at least at initial level, 20 to 30% of the resource coming to a country to be channeled through the national NGOs, through community-based organizations. This will empower the national actors who are close to the communities, who really face the disaster, who can easily be mobilized in no time and respond to the climate risks or disasters. So I really appreciate that we should move on that line.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tekele. And with that, we need to bring this session to a close. We want to thank the panelists. We want to thank all of you. And I'm glad that at least the discussion has made it clear to us that each one of us can do something about climate change. And that is so empowering. Planting a tree, you don't need the United Nations to tell you to plant a tree. You don't need to be empowered by United Nations to plant a tree. We can each do that. Let's go and let's do that. Thank you all.
John.
Sorry, we are going to do the closing session. Only 10-15 minutes. Bear with us as the other group are coming. Thank you. My dear. You don't need to come here. You can do it.
We're going to try to start in 2 or 3 minutes. Some of you who are right by the back might go, I call it the sweep, that is to find people and move them in. But we plan to have to make up for the delays during the day at various points, which were, I think, all for the most part fruitful. So we're going to but we'll try to make up for that by having a very efficient concluding session. But we do need to have that. So yes, if we can get some people who are toward the back to grab people and urge them to come in, tell them we're trying to start, that would be helpful.
Can we please take our seat, please?
We're going to go ahead and start. And I have been designated to go first. So we have I guess I wanted to say two or three things briefly. Number one, when we originally envisioned this session, we thought that we would, by the end of this day, already have a kind of, not an ultimate document, but a kind of final document that we could identify some main points and so on. And the discussion has really been very rich and varied, and to try and reduce that while doing various other things to keep things going during the day doesn't quite work. So we will work on something like that. And for those of you who are still here, tomorrow we're planning to have a session at the Hilton starting from 9 to 11:30 where we can work on some of those kinds of issues. And I can't guarantee that we will have the Declaration of Independence or some other final document, but I think we'll have more time to reflect and think about what's happened. I would say that one of the things that's really impressed me is that this has been an extraordinary opportunity of bringing people together. I've had a lot of experience working with different organizations in Africa that are aimed at bringing people together sort of in the context of law, religion, and so forth. And but there's been in so many ways a very rich group here drawn from different backgrounds, and I think it's been very fruitful to be able to get to know some of the other people, and I think there's been a real opportunity to build bridges and start expanding networks, and that will be extremely useful. There are clearly some areas where there are commonalities, and some of the speeches have talked about trying to identify commonalities, and we have much to do on that. And I think, in fairness, we would have been unfair if we didn't recognize from the beginning that we hoped that this would help highlight a number of major areas that need further reflection, study, thought, and so forth. So some of that will happen tomorrow, some of it will go on, and we hope very much that we can continue and keep people in dialogue. We have other opportunities coming ahead. We're doing a conference in India in May, another one in September. We're doing some other events from a G20 perspective that are global and reach out to other G20 countries. But I think one of the things that will be really unforgettable and has left an indelible imprint on me is just the importance of being able to listen to the African voice. Obviously, I am not an African voice myself. I'm very receptive, very interested, but very understanding that what's really needed is authentic African voice. Now, let me just say a word of thanks to those who have been involved. And as usual, many of the people to whom thanks is owed are out doing other tasks. But I'm particularly grateful that Musi is here. I told some people last night, I learned that his name means Moses. And I think managing to finalize some of the rooms, some of the other odds and things that had to be done, it may not have been the Red Sea, but it was right up there. So I'm very thankful to him but that's an example of the kinds of, But his colleagues and people from the Interreligious Council of Ethiopia have also been deeply involved, engaged, very helpful, and have just been helpful at every turn. And we're thankful for the people at the Ministry of Peace. I'm not sure, they may have, yes, they may have gone on to the next event. But in any event, we're very thankful for all of you in particular for taking the time to come and for the ongoing work we know that each of you do in this area. It's really an extraordinary thing. And as I said this morning, religion is one of the real ultimate resources of, well, not religion, it's religious believers are one of the tremendous resources that Africa has. And I think it's very important that those resources get activated, mobilized to the extent we can help. It's great to the extent you can actually be part of it. It's one of the most fulfilling parts of life. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to our partners who have made this possible. Thank you to the African Union for making this unforgettable place to have this meeting available, for which we're very grateful, and I'm sure we will not forget this. So thank you very much. Thanks to everyone here.
At the outset, I want to thank all of you for your active participation throughout the day on behalf of the organizers. I would like also to take this opportunity to express our appreciation and gratitude to Her Excellency, the President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, for being the patron of this event. And as you heard from her remark, her commitment and clear vision how to engage faith-based organization to be a healing force. One issue that we are facing is the fear of the unknown, and this kind of platform will help us to get to know each other and to amplify the spirit of Ubuntu. I am because of we are. And within this spirit, we are here together, and the work just started. We have a long way to go. I would like also to take this opportunity to thank the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union, and especially the African Union CEDAW, Hazel, who is championing interfaith issues within the African Union Civil Society and Diaspora Directorate. We have a rapporteur who took some notes, as Professor Cole mentioned. Hopefully tomorrow we will come drafting some practical recommendation that will be submitted through AU, and also G20. Before the summit, they will have their meeting, the G20 Interfaith Forum, to the G20. One practical action we are expecting out of this is African Union to be part of the G20. And also, we hope the panelists will send us also email some of the recommendations. The rapporteur already captured some on the panel session on the role of religion in conflict resolution and peace building, and challenging facing women and children in Africa, and also on key issues facing Africa: environment, sustainable development, and last but not least, a very important agenda item we discussed, which we will also come up with practical recommendation: human dignity and freedom of religion or belief as a foundation for interfaith harmony. And as it has been highlighted today, one key element that will help us to move from killing each other to peaceful coexistence, from holding grudge to forgiveness, from dark to light, from fear to hope, is the teaching of the golden rule. We say, treat others the way you want to be treated. And with this, we need to really promote those values in the school. And I hope peace education to be also included, starting from kindergarten, with the Ministry of Education of all member states of the African Union. And as I said earlier, clear policy to be introduced by member states against hate speech and to restore human dignity. So tomorrow we will work on some of the recommendation. And once again, I kindly ask the panelists if you can email us or write some of the recommendation that you would like to be included in the recommendation we are going to share with AU and other relevant partners. With these few remarks, I want to say once again, thank you so much and bless you.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from the citizens and the Diaspora Directorate of the African Union. As we end World Interfaith Harmony Week, I want to express my deepest appreciation to all of you who have participated in this meaningful event. This week has been a remarkable opportunity to promote mutual understanding, respect, and cooperation among people of different faiths and cultures. Today, we have witnessed a powerful display of the beauty of diversity as individuals from all corners of the globe came together to celebrate a common humanity. Together, we have employed the rich tapestry of different beliefs and practices that make up the world's religions, learning from each other and finding new ways to build bridges of understanding. I'm heartened by the progress we made today, but I also know that there is still much work to be done. We live in a world that is too often divided by fear and misunderstanding, where differences are used as a wedge to separate people rather than as a source of strength. Yet, I am confident that events like this week, World Interfaith Harmony Week, can help us to overcome these barriers. By coming together in a spirit of openness, compassion, and respect, we can create a world that is more just, more peaceful, and more harmonious. So let us take the lessons and the experiences of today and carry them forward into our daily lives. Let us continue to seek out opportunities to build bridges of understanding between people of different faith and culture. And let us never forget that despite our differences, we are all members of the same human family, united by our common aspirations for a better world. Thank you, and let us continue to work together towards a more peaceful and harmonious world. I thank you and wish you all a safe flight back home. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Maybe we need to recognize also if we have Malaz in the room, who is the coordinator of the Africa Union Interfaith Dialogue Forum. Malaz, if you are there, if you raise your hand, thank you so much. Let's acknowledge Malaz. And member of the Africa Union Interfaith Dialogue Forum Steering Committee, please raise your hand if you are there. Thank you so much for the outstanding work you are doing. Haj Masood and member of the staff of the Interreligious Council of Ethiopia, we highly appreciate your dedication and outstanding effort. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
And for those of you who are at the Hilton, the buses should be there by 5:30. That's the plan. So now.
Okay. Haj Masood.
Haj
Masood.
Come up, Haj Masood, come up here and just.
We have some announcement, please.
Okay, please, some announcement. Guests who have a room at Hilton Hotel, you have a shuttle or a bus at the main gate. So we will go to there and go to the hotel. Other participants, thank you for coming. Good night.